Do you wish to cross-examine the witness?
Yes, I do. Officer Brown testified that you had $230 in cash on you when he searched you at the bar. Why were you carrying that much money?
Like I said, I just won it from Jack.
A man no one else remembers seeing in the bar.
Yeah, I don't know why no one else saw him.
But you didn't win it all from Jack, right?
No, I brought some money with me that night.
Weren't you afraid that you'd be attacked or robbed with all that cash on you?
No, I've never been robbed before.
How many games did you play in the 3 hours that you testified that you played pool with Jack?
It was about 10 games.
How much beer did you consume that night?
I can't put a number on it, but it couldn't have been more than 6 because I wasn't that drunk.
So if you weren't drunk and you didn't rob the convenience store, why did you get so angry with Officer Brown?
Because he started asking me all these questions about some robbery I know nothing about. And all I was trying to do was have a good night out. He kept asking me and I didn't know what he was talking about. I assumed the robbery happened earlier that night. He just kept pushing me about it. It made me mad, like he was accusing me of something.
So you weren't feeling trapped?
No, because I didn't do it.
Do you go to O'Neill's often?
I've been there a few times.
Are they usually busy?
Yeah, they always seem to be pretty busy.
Was the bar crowded that night?
It was pretty crowded that night. That's why I went to the back to play pool.
And you testified that Jack went to the bar to get the beers the whole time you were playing pool. When he went to the bar, did it take a long time for Jack to get the beers?
It seemed to take Jack a long time to get the beers because after I racked the balls, I always had to wait around a few minutes until he got back.
How long did you wait?
I don't know, maybe 10 minutes.
You waited 10 minutes each time he went to the bar to get beers.
About that long.
How many times during the night did Jack leave you alone in the pool room?
We had a couple of beers, maybe 3 or 4.
So you were alone in the pool room 3 or 4 times that night?
Yeah, about that many times.
Don't you think it's strange that no one else remembers Jack from that night?
No, we were in the back room all night.
Don't you think it was convenient that this man named Jack, that no one else knows, was there playing pool with you exactly when the robbery happened?
It's just what happened.
And we shouldn't think it's odd that you say he left right before the police arrived?
He left at 1:30 because he lost 5 games straight.
So you don't think the whole story is odd at all?
No, just bad luck, I guess.
So while this Jack was getting beer at the bar, did anyone come into the pool room while you were waiting for him?
I don't think so.
So no one can say if you were in the room or not when Jack was getting beer?
Well, people came back there a few times to see if we were done with the table, but I don't remember if it was when we were playing or when I was waiting.
But no one can say for sure that you were there the whole time?
No,
Just like no one can say for sure that Jack was really there.
I guess not.
I have no further questions.
Prosecution, do you wish to cross-examine the witness?
No, Your Honor.
Does the defense have any additional witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
Does the prosecution have any rebuttal witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
We will now proceed with closing arguments. Jurors, please remember that closing arguments are not to be considered as part of this evidence in this case. Mr. Reynolds, you may proceed with your closing argument.
We would like to remind you, the jury, that you must find the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in order to convict him. Do you really think the prosecution has done this difficult task? Look at the evidence. The only evidence brought by the prosecution was a scared victim and a suspicious police officer. When Officer Brown first heard the description of the robber, he had no real reason to suspect Mr. Trent. He seemed to have his suspicions confirmed by the lineup identification. How sure are you that the victim, Ms. Smith, correctly identified Mr. Trent? The defendant himself testified that he did not commit the crime in question. The prosecution has argued that no one saw him playing pool, and that he could have left the bar and returned to the bar unnoticed. Remember, as you are deciding this case, that this does not mean it happened. Our client testified under oath that he was playing pool the whole time. We ask you to remember the following factors as you decide the fate of Mr. Trent. First, there was no reason to suspect Mr. Trent was the perpetrator from the start. Second, the eyewitness identification by Ms. Smith was bad. And finally, remember the defendant's own testimony. These factors add up to reasonable doubt.
Mr. Barrett, you may proceed with your closing argument.
As jurors, we are asking you to do exactly as the defense attorney suggested. Look at the evidence. As evidence that Mr. Trent has committed the crime in question, we have presented testimony by Ms. Smith, who served as an eyewitness to the crime. She had the opportunity to see who robbed the store. She was able to give a description of him to the police, and most important, she was able to identify the defendant in a lineup the very next day. Who should you trust about the identification? It seems clear that you should trust the eyewitness. We also presented testimony from Officer Brown, who proved that he conducted a thorough investigation. When Officer Brown found the defendant, he was wearing clothes that fit the description of the robber, and he had a lot of cash on him. The defendant gave Officer Brown an alibi that no one could confirm. He said he was playing pool, but no one saw him. The police could never find the person allegedly playing with him, and the defendant did not even know who he was or what his last name was. The only time any other person saw the defendant at the bar was after the robbery took place. When you think about which way you will have to vote today, we ask you to think about whether Mr. Trent's alibi was credible. Mr. Trent could easily have left the bar through the back door, robbed the store, threw the gun in the trash, and came back into the bar through the back door. We had two strong witnesses who showed that the defendant was the one who robbed the store. The defense, on the other hand, only presented a shabby alibi. All of this evidence adds up to the proof, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the defendant, John Trent, robbed the convenience store.